But what I want to ask you about, though, is whether or not during this time that you were work colleagues and work friends, if you had an opportunity to form any opinion about the nature of the relationship between Ross and his son Cooper.
Yeah, I got to learn that Ross really did. He talked about Cooper. I have 2 little girls, so we would kind of communicate back and forth, how's Cooper doing, how are your girls doing, what you guys do this weekend. So over that period of time, although we didn't hang out, all the time or after work or on the weekends, by repeatedly interacting with each other, I formed an opinion that he really loves his son, and we would talk about him and my girls, and he seemed very happy and excited when he would talk to me about what was going on, and so that was the opinion that I had developed over that period of time.
Right. I want to talk to you then more specifically about the work component of your relationship. Did there come a time when you learned that Ross was going to be assigned as the lead developer in one of the projects that you were going to manage?
Yes.
Right. To the best of your recollection, tell us what that was all about.
Well, with every project that I would have, there would be a developer that was kind of the lead, that they would refer to as the lead developer, that would be the main point of contact, and the developer that would assist other folks on the team if they needed, other developers needed help. They were the kind of the top dog of the development group or piece of that project. So Ross was going to be the dev lead for this initiative or this project that we were kicking off.
Okay. And I know it's been several years. Do you have any recollection, just even generally, what the project was that Ross was assigned to be the lead developer?
Yeah, I believe it had to do with implementing a tool that would be utilized by the operations group to help monitor how that website was performing, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
But it has been a long time. I apologize.
You spoke to our investigator back in June of 2014.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you told him what you remembered about that day.
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's talk about that day of the 18th. Was there anything unique about that day that related directly to this new project that Ross was going to be the lead developer?
At the beginning of every project, you have what we call a kickoff meeting, and that's just bringing the individuals that you are going to have participating in the project into a meeting to say, this is what we're going to try to do. These are the individuals involved. Everyone can meet one another and say, okay, now we all know each other. We know what we're going to do. These are going to be our next steps. And so you had a meeting to kick off that project that morning.
The morning of June the 18th?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you become aware, did a member of that team need to amend or change the time of that meeting?
Yeah, a request came across from another invitee, a required invitee to that meeting, and she asked that we move it to a later time later. It was going to be that morning at 10 a.m., and she asked that we move it later after 12:30.
Okay.
The day.
And do you remember, in fact, receiving an email that morning?
Yeah, I did receive an email from her, yes.
All right. And do you have a recollection of what time you got the email?
Well, yeah, I was able, because it came to my computer, I was able to, initially when I sat down, I wouldn't know that exact hour, minute, but because I had my laptop, I could look and see, yes, okay, this came across at this specific time, so I knew that she had sent that request at 8:43 in the morning.
Okay. Did I have you, did I show you the, report that the investigator did from your interview with him back in June of 2014?
Yes, sir, you did, several times.
Okay. If I were to show you that again, would that refresh your memory as to what time you told us, or you told him that you got the email requesting that the meeting time be changed?
Sure, yeah, I thought it was 8:43, but I apologize, maybe it's not.
No, it says 8:34. Okay. Okay. And do you remember if Ross responded?
Yes, I had that as well on my computer, so all this was just easy for me to look back and say,
Okay.
this is exactly when this happened. So, yes, just a few minutes after that, I believe it was 8:46, Ross had sent a response saying, yeah, that's fine, maybe we can do it later in that day, 3:30, I think he had asked.
All right, so these were emails from that morning.
Yes, sir.
All right, so I'm going to just show you email from that morning. I'm sorry, it's 180. All right, so I'm going to show you, looks like a screenshot from the phone, and see if you recognize that.
Yes, sir, I certainly do.
All right, and is this the email that you sent confirming that the meeting was going to be changed to 3:30?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and does it show that Ross Harris had confirmed as well, and he acknowledged that morning that the meeting was going to be moved to 3:30?
Yeah, he asked in this part of the email chain, can we do it, let me back up, you can't see on this. The lady that asked to move it and said, I'm available 12:30 or later, I think.
Okay.
And so Ross responded, 3:30 would be better for me, let's confirm all times would be Eastern. And then, so I rescheduled it for 3:30 Eastern time.
Okay.
So yes, sir, that is correct.
All right, I think what you're talking about may be further down on the email chain. Just let you take a look at that and see if that's what you're talking about.
There's actually, let's see, yeah, this is the initial, yeah, this was the meeting invitation,
Okay.
the initial meeting invitation indicating that it was going to be that morning at 10 a.m. And then later, this is the follow-up part to it, where we're rescheduling it to 3:30 and moving it to 3:30.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, so I'll go ahead then and move the minutes 1-8.
No objection. Admitted.
Let me get a paper clip or some together. All right, so looking at this email then, on the morning of June 18th, Ross responds at what time that he's confirming that the time of the meeting's been changed.
And 8:46 a.m.
And it shows that the meeting is moved to 3:30.
Correct. Well, he asked at 8:46, he says that, yeah, 3:30 would be better, but let me know, make sure, confirm it's 3:30 Eastern. And then I responded at 9:01, about 15 minutes later,
says 10 Eastern time, but it says UTC -5.
Yeah, and there's, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I just want to know, do you believe the meeting was at 10 or at 11? Or do you know?
I believe it was at 10.
Okay. Is there something about the way that the email populates that, the blue part there?
You mean, why does it make it blue?
Why does it say?
Yeah, their email system and their calendar scheduling system would add this UTC stuff in there, which is kind of confusing.
Okay.
And that's why even people would sometimes respond, okay, is this really at this time Eastern, or because we wanted to make sure everyone, there are people in different time zones in different
Right.
parts of the country.
Because a lot of these dead folks were actually in Texas.
Correct.
Right.
So that always added a bit of confusion, but the meeting was definitely the morning of the 18th and moved to the afternoon of the 18th.
All right. Now, did you know if Ross had ever been the lead developer on any project before?
I don't believe he had been. I believe this was going to be his first project as the dev lead.
His first one.
Yes, sir.
Now, all right, so the meeting's been moved, and so it's going to be in the afternoon. And at 3:30, did y'all in fact have this meeting?
Yes, sir. Yes, we did.
Okay. Tell us about that. Is this a meeting in a conference room where all y'all get together around a table?
No, because we were all so dispersed, partly, and also because it was hard to get conference rooms. We had a lot of our meetings over conference call, so this was a conference call. So I would dial in, open up what they call the bridge, so that other people could then dial in, and we could all communicate through that same conference line.
All right. And who was the first to call in?
I was the first to call in, and Ross was the next person to dial in after I was on.
All right. While y'all were waiting for the other members of this team, and if I told you the names Cher Simon and Matthew Park, does that sound familiar?
Yes, sir.
Were those the other members of the team?
Yes, sir.
All right. While you were waiting for them to call into the conference call, do you recall if you and Ross had a time to chat for a moment?
Yes, while we were waiting for other folks, kind of not our standard, but what we would typically do if we ran into each other, we're talking, how's it going? How are the kids, kind of a conversation. And so we interacted with, I asked him how Cooper was doing. He said that he's doing good, that he was planning his birthday party was coming up. He's getting ready for his birthday party coming up. We didn't have a whole lot of time to have personal talk because the meeting had started and other people were calling in. But that was our
And
general
obviously,
conversation.
Cooper died that day, and then you were interviewed less than 2 weeks later. Is it fair that conversation stuck out in your mind that Ross had indicated they were planning for his birthday?
Yes.
All right. Now, you said that y'all were not necessarily friends. You weren't friends outside of work. Y'all didn't go to dinner and hang out and share your deepest secrets. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And did Ross ever talk to you about his use of the internet to communicate with women he was not married to?
No, sir.
Did he ever talk to you about infidelities in his marriage?
No, sir.
Did he ever talk to you about counseling that he and his wife were in?
No, sir.
Were y'all that kind of friends where he would share that sort of stuff with you?
No. I mean, that's some pretty personal stuff, so, we talked about the football game over the weekend, or, more lighthearted things that you talk to someone at work about that, you weren't, very close to.
Any family?
Pardon me?
We talked about family.
You did talk about family, sure.
Okay.
I mean, we would talk about, a lot of it was because we both had kids, so we would talk about our kids and whatever, what happened over the weekend, or how ridiculous all the presents they get are for Christmas, or silly stuff like that.
I want to ask you about one other thing, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so you keep referring to him as Ross. But this email says Justin Harris. See that?
Mm-hmm.
And the email that you sent to him actually is sent to Justin Harris. All right?
Right.
Is Justin Harris and Ross Harris the same person?
Yes.
Do you?
Well, I mean, from this, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you have any idea why all of the emails say Justin Harris?
That's set up by the administration for the email and the company site.
Human resources or something?
Right, yeah, but as you can see, his personal signature at the bottom is Ross.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. Do you have knowledge of whether or not you wanted to do a name change in the Home Depot email system? If you wanted to do a name change to correct your name, would that be something that you could just go in and do by yourself?
No, I don't believe you could.
Maybe you have to go to Human Resources to have them do it for you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think that's all I have right now.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, Mr. Henry.
Good morning.
My name is Susan Treadaway. I'm one of the prosecutors in this case. I don't think you and I have had the chance to talk, but I do believe you took a few moments to speak with Investigator O'Connor with our office.
Yes,
Correct,
ma'am.
sir? And I think that was last week sometime, maybe, or the week before?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Just want to ask you a couple of questions. First, looking at Defense Exhibit 180 that was just shown to you, Mr. Kilgore was discussing this. Does this look like this came off of a phone, a screenshot, or came off of an actual computer screen, or do you know?
That looks like it came off a phone screenshot.
This meeting, the 18th of June that you just spoke about, the purpose of this meeting was kind of a meet and greet, it sounds like. Would that be accurate to say?
Sure.
So even though this would be the first time that the defendant would have been the lead developer, there was nothing due at this meeting. No projects were to have been completed by the time you met that day.
Correct.
And this would have been a low-stress meeting. Would you categorize it as such?
Yes.
All right. And in fact, any observations that you made of the defendant that day, you would not say that he appeared to be stressed.
No, he did not.
And in fact, the defendant never expressed to you that day that he was stressed about the meeting.
No, he did not.
And you had no reason to believe or observe leading up to the meeting that he was stressed about the meeting on the 18th.
No, I didn't interact with him that day other than through these emails prior to the meeting.
All right. And I believe that you testified, looking at Defense Exhibit 180, that in fact there was some communication via email that morning about changing the meeting, correct?
Correct.
And that the defendant had responded via remote location, or you assumed it came from his phone. Would that be correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And could you explain how you came to that? Why did you have that assumption?
Based on the tag from his response, it'll indicate, I would know whether it came from the internal network computers or from someone's phone.
And as we sit here today and review the exhibit, are you able to see that information? Are you able to tell that from the exhibit, or are you recalling from your review of those documents back in 2014?
When I sat down and met with JT Summers about within 2 weeks after the 18th, I'm not sure specifically what day, I had my laptop, work laptop, so as we were talking through that day, I was able to go into my computer, and that's why I was able to specifically say at this specific time and that type of thing. So before I went and looked, I couldn't have told you at what specific, hour and minute something happened, and I certainly wouldn't have been able to remember it this long. But that's the reason I can say it today, is because that's what I had looked at on my computer and shared back then.
Sure, and JT Summers, that would have been an investigator who works with the defense.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Talking about your personal relationship or your knowledge of the defendant now, you never actually met Cooper.
No, I did not.
And so therefore, you never would have had the opportunity to observe Cooper with the defendant or them as a family.
I did not.
And any information or any observations that you could make to share with this jury would have been only from that you gleaned from the defendant himself in work hours.
Yes, that's correct.
And in fact, as Mr. Kilgore pointed out, any online activities, anything personal that was going on in the marriage or outside of the marriage involving this defendant, you would have no way of knowing any of that.
That is correct. I did not know about that.
The meeting that was moved to 3:30 on the day of the 18th, you testified that there was some conversation between you and the defendant about Cooper.
Yes, ma'am.
And in fact, I believe that you also testified that that conversation included discussion about Cooper's upcoming birthday.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know when Cooper's birthday is?
I don't know the date of his birthday.
And that conversation that you had with the defendant happened just before he would have left work that day.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Henry.
Thank you.
Ms. Turley mentioned Nick O'Connor. Is that someone who works for the district attorney's office?
I believe so, yes, yes.
Okay. Is he the fellow sitting on the front row, the really
Yes.
tall, handsome one right there in the middle?
Yes, sir.
When did you meet with him?
I don't know the exact date. It was either last week or potentially the week before that, but it was in the last week or two.
Last week or the week? All right,
Yes,
so,
sir.
you've identified Defendant's Exhibit 80, and this, you said indicates, looks like a screenshot of the phone,
Yes, sir.
and you agreed that that's your name right there, Ryan Henry?
Yes, sir.
And you were communicating an email with Ross Harris, 8:45, 8:46, 9 o'clock, the morning of June 18th.
Yes, sir.
Did the Clark County Police meet with you and talk to you about this?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Nothing further.
Thank you.
Oh, Nathaniel Coyle. Nathaniel Coyle, please. if you'll just introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen, giving us your name and the city you live in, please, sir.
My name is Nathaniel Coyle, C-O-Y-L-E, and I'm from Marietta, Georgia.
Very good. And Nathaniel, do you know Mr. Ross Harris?
Yes, he and I went to the same church,
All right. What's the name of that church?
Stonebridge Church.
And is that located in Marietta?
Yes, sir, it's on the Marietta.
Yeah, tell the ladies and gentlemen a little bit about Stonebridge Church, where it's located, its size.
It's in the Marietta Square, right downtown Marietta, and I think it's maybe 500 or so. Big enough for 2 services that are packed, so.
Fair enough. And is it a church that attracts a lot of younger couples like yourself and your wife and your
Yes, a
family?
lot of young couples, a lot of children.
How long have y'all been there?
My wife and I have been going there for, since January 2013.
Very good. And because of its location on Marietta Square, there's a little bit of land issue there, to say the least. Do y'all have a traditional, what we might know as a Sunday school, small group learning atmosphere? What do y'all do?
We, as opposed to having the traditional Sunday schools, we have a small group that meet during the week, people's houses or even at the church itself.
Yeah, what's the purpose of these small groups?
Each one is different. You know, they'll review the sermon or they'll read a book together and talk about it. Kind of each one's different.
You know, these for various topics and various life stages, different people go to different groups.
Yes, sir.
And did you participate in one of those groups?
Yes, sir.
And did you have occasion to participate in one with Ross and Leanna Harris?
Yes, sir.
All right. And can you tell us a little bit of a time frame, first of all, of when that was?
It was in January 2013 when we first started going to the church. We got involved in a group that month.
Very good. And do you remember where that group was meeting?
We were meeting at the church.
At the church itself?
sir.
Very good. And how often would y'all get together?
We met twice a month, so like every other week.
And would these be other folks your age as well?
Yep.
Other folks with kids?
Yes, sir.
And just explain to the ladies and gentlemen a little bit, how did y'all get together and what did y'all do once you got there?
So we met every other Monday night. We'd get together, you know, we met at 6:30 p.m. So some people were getting off of work, coming straight there. Some may have brought their dinner. Then after maybe 15, 20 minutes of just hanging out, then we'd go over the book that we were reading and talk about it. And then at the end, we'd break off into guys and girls time.
Very good. And what about children? That y'all had children, what y'all do with them?
We had childcare, so
Okay.
after everyone came, we'd take the kids up.
And would it be typical for parents coming from 2 different directions to converge there onto the small group?
Yes, sir.
And specifically with regards to Ross and Leanna, do you recall if they would typically be coming from different locations or come together, or do you know?
Sometimes they'd come together, sometimes Ross would be coming from work, and Leanna would be coming from her job or from her house.
And when y'all would split off amongst your, the men together and the women together, how many folks are we talking about that might be in, particularly in the men's group?
Maybe 6 to 8. I don't really remember that going through everybody, counting
That's
everybody.
That's right. And are these all folks who y'all go to church together with?
Yes, sir.
And did there come a point in time where you became aware of Ross having some issue regarding pornography?
Yes, sir.
Tell us how you came to be aware of that.
It was during the breakout session with the guys. During that time, we would kind of share what's going on in our lives and pray for each other. So he brought up that Leanna had found some pornography on his computer, and so he wanted to kind of confess that he was struggling with it, and just wanted to have us pray for him and kind of check up on him.
Did y'all discuss anything with him as far as what he might do to address that?
He said that he had already talked with a friend of his that was going to be an accountability partner, kind of set up his computer to help monitor
All right.
his activity.
Very good. And do you recall, did y'all pray with him that particular night?
Yes, we did, sir.
Do you remember specifically when that was?
It was sometime in March.
Of
March of 2013.
2013, okay. And after that meeting, did y'all continue to have further meetings every other week?
Yes, sir.
And do you recall any specific follow-up about that issue with Ross?
We did, we asked him about it for at least 2 more meetings, if maybe a third, and then it kind of tapered off, because we knew that he had already had someone else that he was being accountable with.
Very good. Did you ever meet that person who was being his accountability partner?
No, sir.
Was it anybody within y'all's group, to your knowledge?
Not that I was aware of.
Very good. And after that point in time, did you ever come forward with any further information about meeting up with women or being involved with prostitutes or anything of that nature?
No, sir.
And did you have any awareness of that at all?
No, sir.
Very good. And did you have opportunities to see Ross interact with Cooper Harris?
Yes, sir.
Tell us how you would see that.
It's primarily in context of either a small group or even on Sunday mornings at church, if we went to the same service. Many times, like if he was coming directly from work and Leanna had brought Cooper already, he'd come in and he'd often say, where's my buddy? After small group, when all the kids came back, Ross would pick him up. Most of the time, Cooper kind of became the center of Ross's attention whenever he was around.
Did you ever talk about Cooper other than when he was right there?
A lot, yeah.
Okay. And did you ever observe anything indicating any sort of ill will or malice that Ross had toward Cooper?
Not at all.
And do you remember when the last time you would have seen Ross and Cooper and Leanna?
I guess it would sometime in 2014, maybe May, June,
All right.
I guess.
And is this the church where Ross was playing the guitar?
Yes, sir.
In the band?
He was in the
Would
band,
you see
yes.
him there on Sunday mornings when he'd be playing with that group as well?
Yes, sir.
All right, that's all I have for right now.
Good morning. Hey, I'm Chuck Boring. We spoke on the phone, gosh, it was probably like September now, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay, and I just got a few questions for you. You talked about the discussion where in the small group, the defendant came to you, or came to the group and said, I need to talk to y'all, I'm been caught looking at porn.
Correct, yes.
Okay, and when you talked to me, you told me, your opinion of it was, how he came to you was, he knew Leanna was going to dime him out, or basically telling him at her part of the small group, so he had to come talk to y'all about it, right?
He mentioned that Leanna was going to mention it, yes.
Okay, see, when we talked before, back in September, he told me this wasn't like he just was going to come out and confess. It was, he got busted, and so he knew she was going to tell, so he had to tell, correct?
He just mentioned that she was going to mention it in the women's session.
Okay. And so when we talked in September, that was kind of your opinion of how or why he did disclose that, correct?
It's possible, yes.
Okay. And just a little bit on that, you said he talked about he's already got an accountability partner. Do you know that he had an accountability partner off and on since like 2010?
No, I did not know that.
Okay. You talked a little bit about him playing the guitar in church and things like that. I know you said you saw his relationship with Cooper and it looked like a loving one and things like that, correct?
Correct, yes.
And with Leanna the same way?
Yes.
Very loving, very attentive.
Yes.
Didn't appear to be anything wrong, like he was treating her bad in any way, correct?
Correct.
When he was in those small group meetings, I imagine he didn't tell you about the fact that he was messaging other women and bragging about playing guitar in the church at the same time, trying to get photographs and sexting them. He didn't mention that.
He did not mention anything, communicate with other women.
Did he ever tell you that the reason he was able to do this was because he did not have a conscience, or his conscience never kicked in?
That was never said.
That would be a different person than the one that you saw there in small group and at church. Would you agree with that?
I guess in the context of how I knew him, that would be different, yes.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Boring asked you about Ross's coming to speak to y'all, and he told you that Leanna was going to be telling the ladies group as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did he say anything about, gosh, I got to tell y'all because she's going to dime me out or something of that nature?
No, he just made mention that she was going to mention it.
All right. And would that alert you that your wives would also know about it So it's something that y'all will all be praying together for.
I think that was the intent.
And with regards to the
I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Nothing further, Judge.
Vince calls Heather Coyle.
You solemnly swear to tell the testimony so that you record your notice and nothing but the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Good morning, Heather.
Good morning.
Please introduce yourself to everyone. Tell us who you are and where you're from.
My name is Heather Coyle, and I'm from Marietta, Georgia.
Okay. And the man who just left, that's your husband?
It is.
Right. And so these folks have heard your name come up once or twice during the trial. Are you a travel agent in the Marietta area?
I am.
Okay. Is there any kind of travel in particular that your company does, or are you just basically a general travel agent?
We specialize in the Caribbean and the tropical islands, Hawaii, Central America, South America, but we do anywhere if anybody wanted to.
Okay. And you knew Ross and Leanna Harris.
Yes.
What was the context that you knew them?
We went to church together, and we were in a small group together.
Okay. And at Stonebridge, the men and women had breakout time or met separately in small group?
Yes, in small group, there were times where we would break into just the women and just the men. Yes.
Okay. All right, so I want to go ahead then and ask you a little bit about your work as a travel agent as it related to the Harrises. Had they actually used your service before?
Yes, I helped them plan a trip back in, I think it was around October of 2013, to the Dominican Republic.
Susan, this is gonna be 181. It's gonna be,
That's me.
I'm sorry. It's 181, it's gonna be August of 2013. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, Heather, I'm gonna show you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 181. And did I show you that this morning?
You did?
And do you recognize that?
Yes.
All right. Just tell us generally, what is it I've handed to you?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Generally, what is it that I've just handed to you that you can identify?
Basically, this is just emails back and forth between me and Leanna discussing some options for them to consider for the trip that they ended up taking in October of 2013.
Okay. I'll move 181.
No objection.
All right. And you had a chance to look through it?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So you agree then this was email originating here at the top from Leanna. The top one from, is that what you wrote?
Right here?
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So the time frame we're talking about is August 2013.
Yes.
All right. And what is it that you're conveying to Leanna, or what is it you're telling her about in August of 2013?
I've given her some options for the trip that they ended up taking. I gave her some options for Mexico, some hotel options, all-inclusive hotels. I gave her some options for Jamaica, and then I gave her some options for the Dominican Republic. And then, at that point, sent them to her and for her and Ross to discuss
Right.
from there.
As a travel agent, you deal with people a lot by email,
Yes,
on the phone?
most of it's email.
Do they ever walk into the office?
No, I'm a home-based agent.
Well, in a lot of, it's fair to say what you do would be characterized as sales then?
Yes,
Right. A lot of us daydream about things that we want to have or trips that we want to go on. You deal with a lot of people that make inquiries about trips and then never purchase services from them.
yes.
It's part of sales, right? But the Harrises, they made a specific inquiry about travel in August of 2013, right? And they went on that trip, didn't they?
They did.
Okay. Let's move ahead then to 2014. Did you ever have any communication in person with Ross Harris regarding his desire to plan a family cruise?
I did.
Okay. Where would that communication have been?
It was at the church, Stonebridge Church. It was briefly in passing. He mentioned that he wanted to plan a trip for their family, a cruise, and I said, okay, shoot me an email. And that's what I did.
I'm not going to pin you down to any certain date. Obviously, this was a long time ago. But it's fair to say that that one-on-one personal discussion, communication that you had with Ross at Stonebridge, specifically about a family cruise, that would have been some weeks before Cooper's death?
Yeah, I want to say it was approximately a month prior.
Okay.
Again, I don't remember the exact date, but that's what comes to mind, was around a month
Okay.
before.
And y'all headed up a small group,
We did,
right? So you were at church regularly,
yes.
and the Harris as well, you saw them on a regular basis?
Yes, at church and in small group.
Okay. So it's very possible that this communication between you and Ross may have been on one of these Sundays that y'all would have been at church?
Yeah, I want to say it was either on a Sunday or like after small group, which was during the week.
Okay. And obviously, I have met with you previously, right?
Yes,
And we've gone over your emails with Ross,
yes.
right? So I want to show you then what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 608. And see if that is one of the emails that I've shown you before that we talked about.
It is.
All right. And what is the date and time of that email?
It's from Ross to myself on June 17th, 2014, at 3:18 p.m.
All right. And if you would, please read that email that Ross sent to you.
Heather, my family is looking to go on a cruise around mid-October. When I say family, I mean 9 people. That includes Leanna, Cooper, and I, as well as my brother, his wife, and his 6 kids. Cooper is the only toddler, but I was hoping you could put a few things together to see what we're all looking at. Any ideas?
Okay. Now, is that email topic regarding family cruises, is that consistent with the sort of in-passing conversation you had with Ross weeks earlier at church?
Yeah, it was so brief. We're just looking to plan a cruise.
Okay. And weeks later, he follows up with an email,
Yes.
the morning of June the 17th,
3:18 p.m.
afternoon of June
Yep.
the 17th.
Yes.
All right, and then you responded. I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 609. See if you recall that.
I do.
All right. And I don't need you to read it, but could you kind of just summarize what it was that you you emailed back to Ross? What were you conveying to him?
Basically, I'm happy to help them, just had a few questions to get started. I asked them, the length of the cruise they're looking for, 5 or 7 days. I asked what the budget would be. And then I asked them, what port are you looking to possibly go out of? I asked him the approximate ages of the children that are going to be on the cruise, and a little bit more specifics about individual people as far as ages and stuff like that, who would be in what cabins, and that was about, and I said, what destination might you guys be looking to go to?
Okay. Is it fair to characterize your response to Ross's initial email? It's kind of a very broad overview, and you're asking.
Judge, I'm going to object to leading and a narrative right now and ask her how and what about that, but he's basically supplying the answer.
I don't want you to have to read through the whole thing, but is this your initial response to him, where you were asking some questions to kind of help you narrow down what it is that information you can provide?
Yes.
And then the next email I'm going to show you is marked as either of those. This is State's Exhibit 610. And see if you recognize this response from Ross at 6:05 p.m. on June 17th.
I do.
And can you read to us what Ross emailed you back at a little after 6 o'clock on June 17th?
He says probably 5 days to keep our budget down. Location is flexible, but probably more Bahamas/Caribbean. Port Canaveral might be a bit far, but not out of the question. Maybe New Orleans or Charleston. Here are everyone's ages: 33, 32, 37, 35, 17, 15, 13, and 13. I think I prematurely said 11 because my parents might come. And yes, our cabin would be just us. No per head budget yet.
All right, thank you. And then you actually responded back to him by email the following morning. Of course, we know this is the morning that Hoover died, June the 18th. And I want you to look at this. I want you to just flip through it by yourself and verify that that is in fact the information you provided to Ross by email.
It is.
Heather, that's kind of a long email. Let me ask you, did you type all of those words yourself?
A lot of it, and then some of it I copied and pasted.
You cut and paste?
Yeah.
And why would you do that? Why would you cut and paste information to pass on to a customer about pricing and things of that nature?
Well, it saved myself a little bit of time.
Okay. Okay. Is it fair to say a lot of that is just very general information?
Yes.
Okay. And by general, I mean, are you providing to the customer, in this case, Ross Harris, just sort of dumping all of the information he can consider whatever he wants?
Yes, I'm giving him all of his options.
Okay. That's a much better way of putting it than how I phrased it. All right. He has indicated to you, when he responded, probably 5 days to keep our budget down. Okay. And he's given you the number of individuals-ish, because he says might, talking about his parents. So it's might, maybe it's 13, maybe it's 11. But when you reply to him, you give a variety of information as far as the different kinds of cabins. Is that fair to say? Ocean view cabin, suite, is that correct?
It is.
And do you give the prices for ocean view cabins and balcony cabins?
I do?
And some cabins are more expensive than others.
Yes.
Do you provide any information to him in this email about a cruise on October the 18th through the 23rd? Direct your attention to the middle of that second page. See that on here?
Yes.
What is the name of that? What is the name of that ship?
The Carnival Elation?
The Carnival Elation. So that's information that you provided to him as one of the options that might fit their needs.
Yes.
And if you can see here, do you also pass along the different cabins, such as the Ocean View cabin, and those prices?
I do.
And do you pass along information for something called the Grand Suite, and sort of what the Grand Suite is all about,
I do?
and the price for a Grand Suite?
Yes.
Sounds, well, you just have to read what it says for Grand Suite.
The Grand Suite aboard Carnival Elation features even more space than the standard suite. Plenty of room in your room. This stateroom is loaded for an unparalleled experience. VIP check-in, a huge balcony, and even a convenient dressing area with vanity. Yeah. 5 people in the cabin would be $2,900.10 total.
So this is information that you provided to him, including information about the Grand Suite on the Carnival Elation. True?
Yes, it is.
All right. And it sounds pretty great, doesn't it?
Sure.
Is this the last, communication that you had with Ross regarding his attention to plan camera crew?
It is.
Thank you, Heather.
Good morning. We talked briefly this morning and a few weeks ago, correct?
That is.
Okay. Just briefly, I think the jury's heard this, they've seen this, but just to make sure we point out a couple of details. In the defendant's email to you, well, first of all, he emailed you back, or emailed you initially, it was 3:18 p.m. on the 17th?
Yes,
Does that
I
sound
believe so.
okay? All right. Do you have any idea what spurred that, if he'd been texted somebody or anything like that, or what he'd said to that previous person? You don't have any knowledge of that, do you? Okay. So you know you get an email at 3:18 p.m., and he's asking about this. Now, had he followed up at all since mentioning to you this vacation at all, between the time he mentioned it to you about a month before church and then that day?
No.
And I believe you stated your communication mainly was just via email with him, correct?
It was.
Okay. And then he said in his email, he confirmed, one, he was trying to keep his budget down, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. And then two, he said the cabin would just be the 3 of them, he, Leanna, and Cooper, correct?
In their cabin, yes.
Yes, okay. So they were only going to have a 3-person cabin and keeping their budget down, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you sent the email and you put all these different prices, they're different, just looking at it, many different possibilities for, 2-people cabins, 3-people cabins, things like that, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the suite that you sent that because when we talked earlier, you told me, he said there was a ton of other people going too, so you didn't know how they were going to mix and match. And then this room fits 5, so that may fit that kind of group, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Because that suite is like almost $3,000, correct?
It was, just under that, yeah.
And that ain't consistent with trying to keep your budget down. Would you agree?
I guess it depends on their budget in general, but yeah.
Right. Okay. And definitely not for 3 people, more for 5 people, correct?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe for the family that had more children.
Right, because they had a whole bunch of them, didn't they?
I think
It
there were
sounded like,
4.
yes, ma'am. Okay. One other thing, did this email that he you sent him, is it 9:35 a.m., correct?
Yes.
Okay, and this was talking about things involving his son. So 10 minutes after 9:25, what would have been 9:25 a.m., you sent him this email, correct?
Yeah, I sent the email at 9:35?
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Okay,
All right, so about 10 minutes after 9:25.
okay, yes, sorry.
Okay, now that, you probably have no idea why I'm even asking that, so I'll move on. And he had responded pretty quickly back and forth that afternoon before regarding your conversations, correct?
Yes.
He ever respond to this email whatsoever?
No.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Michael Simmons.
You do solemnly swear upon the testimony you shall give in court and jury on which nothing will be the truth, but the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Sure. Absolutely.
Well, Mr. Simmons, if you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen and spell your last name for the court reporter, please, sir.
Sure. Good morning. I'm Michael Simmons. My name is, last name is spelled S-I-M-M-O-N-S.
All right. And, Michael, where do you live?
I live in Baton Rouge, Louisiana right now.
And, you know Mr. Ross Simmons.
Yes, sir.
How long have you known Ross?
I think we met in the year 2000, so 16 years or so.
Explain to us, how did you come to know Ross?
Ross and I met the first time in a high school Bible study that we attended back
Where
in
were
the
you-
year 2000.
Where were you living at that time?
I was living in Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
All right. And, at that point in time, did you know Ross prior to being involved in the Bible study, or did you just come to meet him and through that study?
That was the first time that we were formally introduced. I believe I had seen him out and around the city at a time or two, but never met him formally at that point.
Very well. And did y'all start hanging out or whatnot at that point?
We did. From that first night we met, we hung out. He invited me back over to his apartment and spent some time together, and he introduced me to a couple other friends of his that then became my close friends as well.
Very good. And was Ross older than you or younger than you?
He's older, a year or two older than me.
Very well. And did you build that relationship, continue to get together with him and the group of friends y'all had together?
Absolutely. That summer of year 2000, we spent almost every day together. Hung out at his apartment, spent the night quite a few times, just became real close, bonded, and have been good friends ever since then.
What was Ross doing at that time for employment?
He was working for Coca-Cola. I believe he was setting up displays in grocery stores for Coke products.
All right. And what were you doing at that time?
That summer, I just graduated high school. I was unemployed, looking for a job, and just hanging out with friends and figuring out what I was going to do until college started that fall.
Very good. And did you end up going on to college that fall?
I did.
Where was that?
I went to Shelton State Community College in Tuscaloosa for a semester. That first semester, then right after that, I went to Alabama, University of Alabama for a semester.
Was Ross in school at that point in time as well?
I don't believe so.
All right. And he was not married at that point?
No, sir. It was not.
Very good. And how long did y'all end up, were y'all living together as roommates, you and Ross, another guy or another?
Yes, we were. Ross and James Jones and I were staying together in that apartment. They were kind enough to let me stay over there for a few months until I figured out what was going on with school and work, and let me stay and invited me. Were very welcoming and hospitable, and let me stay with them quite a bit that year.
And did you know Ross, were y'all still friends hanging out when he got married to Leanne?
Oh yes, very much so.
And did you get to meet Leanne as well in that
I did.
process?
I sure did. I met Leanna actually through an old
aside from Ross, and they ended up meeting during that same time period that we all hung out.
Very good. And did you recall, were you actually present at their wedding?
I was in the wedding, I was a groomsman.
In the wedding, all right.
Yes, sir.
And over the years, when did you end up leaving Alabama and headed to Louisiana?
I moved to Louisiana in 2005, got a job and finished up school. My family had moved there a few years prior, so wanted to be closer to them, got a job opportunity, and decided to make the move to Baton Rouge in 2005.
Did you stay in contact with Ross?
I did, yeah.
How so?
By phone a lot, mostly at that point, but I was still very close with him and two other friends that were kind of our group of friends. So I'd come visit a few times a year, make the drive up, or they'd come down for a football game or something like that. And so we stayed in communication quite a bit during that time.
Who are this close group of friends? Who are these other guys?
Sure. Billy Kirkpatrick, James Jones. We kind of consider, and Ross and myself kind of consider ourselves the group of friends that we had at that time.
Very good. And over the years, you said y'all might get together for football games and things of that nature?
Yeah, we did. They came down a couple times to the LSU-Alabama games. And when Alabama played LSU, I came up to Alabama on a few occasions and brought some friends from down there up there. And we just visit. I missed them a lot, and we didn't see each other all the time since I had moved. So we tried to make the visit as often as we could.
Very good. And did you have occasion to, or when did you become aware of Ross and Leanna having a child?
When did I become aware? Probably pretty quickly after they got pregnant with Cooper. They had been trying for a while, if I remember right. So they were pretty excited to have a kid, because that had been something they'd been wanting to do for a while.
Were you surprised at all of their excitement about having a child?
No, I wasn't. I mean, Billy had a couple of children at that point, and I think our friend James had also had a couple children, and so he was kind of ready to fall in the queue and have a kid himself.
Very good. And when he ended up having a boy named Cooper, did that surprise you in any way?
No, it didn't. It's kind of funny because Ross and I, on several occurrences, had just talked about having kids and a family, and that's something that we wanted to do. Both of us wanted to do at some point. And he had mentioned Cooper a couple of times just on random occurrences, and mentioned that was a name that he liked and something that he might want to name his child one day. And it was kind of funny when Cooper was born and they named him that, because I'd heard him mention that before.
Okay. And over the years, after Cooper was born, during that year to 2 years, did you have occasion to see Ross and Leanna with Cooper?
I did. I met Cooper, I believe it was May of 2014 for the first time, and Ross was kind of excited that I finally got a chance to meet him. They had moved to Atlanta at that point, and I was still in Louisiana, so it made it difficult to visit a lot, but I got a chance to meet with him. We met in Tuscaloosa. Our friend Billy was having his wedding that weekend, and we were both in the wedding that weekend as well. So got to see him, got to meet Cooper for the first time, and he was excited. He was kind of bummed that I hadn't had the opportunity to meet him before then.
Wow. And did you see Ross interacting with Cooper during that weekend?
Yes, we all went to church together. That's where I met Cooper, was at church. So I got him out of the nursery, and we kind of hung out a little bit after service ended, and went to lunch, and then they kind of hung out as a family, and I was tagging along with Billy and his wife and kids, and Ross and Leanna.
Very well. And besides that opportunity and seeing them and even going to church with them, were you aware of what Ross was doing on the side involving other women and online?
No, sir, I wasn't aware at the time. I wish you would have told me about it. I'd love to help him out and be there for him, because I know he would have been there for me, but I didn't know.
And after that occasion, did you have occasion to actually see Ross in June of 2014?
I did, yeah. I saw him in Atlanta at his apartment, his and Leanna and Cooper's apartment.
Why were you there?
Why was I there? I was on my way. I was on a 10-hour layover. We were flying from Baton Rouge to Ecuador for a work trip, and just happened to have a 10-hour layover in Atlanta. And I thought it was a good opportunity for me and my coworkers to spend some time with Ross and hang out and see his apartment and see the city and see the sights and where he So he hosted us. He was very excited to do that. Very kind to my friends and welcoming, and drove us around, showed us all the areas that they like to visit, where they like to hike and where they like to, the baseball games they would go to and stuff like that.
When you say
So,
they, who are you referring to?
Cooper and Leanna, yes, sir. So he also showed us, we went to the local REI, I think,
Okay.
tried to pick up some hiking gear for a trip that they had been planning that was coming up soon, and just was glad to be there. He talked about moving to a big city for a while, talked about moving to Nashville, and when he moved to Atlanta, I was kind of asking him about, what was Atlanta like, and was he glad to be there? And so, of course, he was very excited to be in Atlanta, and the opportunity, and excited about his family being there.
Did he talk to you about plans to move to a new location there in Atlanta?
Yeah, we talked briefly about it, because when Ross and Leanna and Cooper lived in Tuscaloosa, they owned a house there, and so I was just curious and kind of bringing up conversation of, when do y'all think y'all get in the house again? He said, well, we're trying to have this apartment get into someplace that's more of our own. When we were driving around town, he was kind of showing us around. He was showing us the local areas and the neighborhoods that he was interested in living.
Did he mention kind of the local areas they were looking at, or what was important to them, important to him, as far as where they might move to?
Sure, yeah. He just in general conversation mentioned that he liked the area that they were in. Schools were good, be a good place for Cooper to grow up. They were very comfortable there. They had access to the hiking trails and different things like that. So he was pretty good about that.
And you said there were a couple other folks with you that were coworkers of yours.
Yes, sir.
Did Ross know these people?
I think Ross met one of them beforehand, but he didn't know either of them very well.
Okay. And was he showing you all this stuff about he and his family, both to you and these somewhat strangers, I guess?
He was. One of my coworkers is a close friend of mine, so he was excited to, his name is JD, he was excited to show JD around the apartment, and Pete was the other gentleman. He was excited to show them both around. He's always excited to show stuff off, so we kind of took us a little mini tour of the apartment, showed us Cooper's room, showed us their room, showed us pictures of him and Cooper at the baseball game, I believe, and just kind of, it's very normal interaction.
Did he indicate any problem that he was having with Cooper or Leanna at that point in time?
No, he didn't mention anything about problems.
Did he indicate that he was glad they weren't there that weekend, so y'all could have a guys' time together, anything of that nature?
He was glad we got some time together, but he mentioned he was disappointed that they couldn't be there to see him, because, I've been friends with Leanna for a while, and it would have been another opportunity to visit with Cooper a little bit more. So he was disappointed that they weren't there.
Did he appear to be proud of Cooper?
Yes, he was very proud of Cooper.
Did he indicate that he was depressed in any way, or at a breaking point, or anything of that nature?
No, he didn't indicate any of that. Ross is very, generally in a good mood, and he just was his same old self that weekend.
And this was, do you remember when in June this was, 2014?
It was mid-June, I would say. I don't know the exact date, but June 7th through 11th, I believe, somewhere around that time frame.
All right. And, I think that's it for now. Thank you, Michael.
How you doing, sir? Now, was this just a layover in Atlanta? You were just there for a few hours?
Correct, yes, sir, 10 hours.
Okay, so would June 7th, would that sound about right? If that was a day, if your vacation was through the 11th?
Yes, sir, sounds about
Or
correct.
work trip?
Work trip.
Okay, let me just show you some text messages between you and the defendant, just to real briefly see if that refreshes your recollection.
Sure.
Excuse me. Just looking at that, your name's Michael Simmons, obviously, and is that your number?
Correct.
And is that the defendant's number, the 6806?
Looks familiar, yes, sir.
It talks about being on the way, you're talking about Delta, and then at the end of the day, he says, or you say, thanks for hanging with us today.
Mhm.
And that's all on June 7th, correct?
I believe so.
Okay, so that would have been the day that you were there.
Yes, sir.
All right. What parts of the city did y'all visit? And how long were you there?
Well, the total area was 10 hours. We drove around for a couple of hours around Ross's apartment,
Mhm.
and we visited a local diner. I think it was the Marietta Diner,
Mhm.
if I remember correctly. Drove around Home Depot, drove by Chick-fil-A. I'm very vague on the names of the parts of town, but we drove on the interstate, drove downtown, drove by the stadium. He mentioned that they were filming Walking Dead there somewhere.
Mhm.
I think he drove us by close to where they were filming the show.
Okay.
And, off in the distance, he kind of pointed out Kennesaw Mountain. He was pointing that out too. So-
Okay. So y'all were down in Buckhead, things like that. Are you familiar with the Atlanta area and some of the names?
Not too well, no, sir.
Okay. All right. Now, I believe you've known the defendant since 2000, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And when did you move to Louisiana?
2005.
Okay, so you haven't lived in the same area in close proximity to the defendant in 11 years.
Not since 2005.
Okay. All right. Now, you knew Leanna as well. You've met her on several occasions.
Correct.
And you talked about Ross. I think you said he liked to show off.
Uh,
Would you agree with that? Sometimes he's kind of loud, show off, exaggerates things. Or would you
He
disagree
likes
with
to
that?
impress people, sure.
Okay. He's worried about perception a lot of times, correct? Would you agree with that?
Honestly, I don't think he's worried about perception. He's pretty confident and carries himself well and kind of just happy-go-lucky. And, most people like him just because he carries himself that way.
Right. Well, you said he likes to impress people.
Yes, he does.
That's something he consciously does, is try to impress people. Let's see, just a few other questions. You said that back in May and June, you had no idea what was really going on in his life.
Correct.
Okay. And what is it that you come to understand was actually going on in his life that you said you would have tried to help him with?
Throughout the course of the court hearings, I just caught wind of some of the things that he was doing with some of the numbers he was texting.
Okay. Now, have you talked to Leanna about this or anything? Or?
I have not.
Okay. You said you would have liked to try to help him with this. Were part of the things that you were aware of that he was actually sexting with underage girls and things like that, things that would have been criminal acts?
No, are you asking if
Yeah,
I was
did you,
aware of
is that something that you knew, that you heard
No.
of? Okay.
No, I was not aware of that.
Okay, so that's something even far and beyond what you thought you knew.
Yeah, I didn't know the full extent of what was going on at all. But of course, I would love to. It sounds like it was difficult, and I would love to be there to support him.
Okay. To try to get him to stop messaging girls that were underage?
I'll just be there as a friend
Okay.
and support him in any way I can.
Okay. And also, did you know he was actually, after being asked to come home by Leanna to spend time with her and Cooper, was going to see prostitutes?
No, I was not aware of that.
Okay. The Ross that you knew, the defendant, would you have qualified him, would you call him a risky person?
No, I wouldn't qualify him as a risky person.
Or a
He would
risk
be
taker or
bad
something like that?
communication.
Okay.
A risk taker, no, I wouldn't consider him a risk taker.
So if this other side, there's another side of him that's a big risk taker and doing things like that, that would be completely opposite of the Ross Harris you knew, correct?
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay. For instance, wanting to have sex with other women in public places, risky behavior like that, that's completely contrary to the Ross Harris you knew. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I hate to ask you this, but do you know what a glory hole is?
Yes, sir, I'm aware.
Okay. That's risky behavior, would you not agree? Very risky behavior, engaging in sexual acts with somebody you can't even view or see.
Using a glory hole?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes, sir.
I would consider that risky behavior, yes, sir.
Okay. And And so if he was engaging in things like that with strangers, he would meet on Craigslist and things like that. You would say that would be risky behavior, completely different than the defendant that you knew, correct?
That would not be in line with the Ross that I'm okay with.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Any further? Thank you for coming all this way, Mr. Simmons.
Ready to go. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our morning recess right now. Notepads, keep an open mind, no discussion, enjoy each other's company and take a break.
Let's all rise for the jury, please. Just like a step going down.
Let's take our morning recess.
You going up?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Oh, come at the last minute. No, go ahead, go ahead. That's fine. I'm through. Look at he went the last minute.
we bring George?
No, ma'am.
It's all rise for the jury. Please be seated.
Please proceed.
We're going to recall Heather Coyle.
Just have a seat, you're still under oath.
All right, Ms. Coyle, you did not leave the building after you testified last,
No.
and I caught you outside, and we had a chance to talk again, correct?
We did?
Okay. The last thing that Mr. Boyne had asked you about was drawing to your attention the time of the email that you sent back to Ross on the morning of June the 18th.
Yes.
Okay. He had emailed you the day before, and you returned an email, the last email to him at 9:35 that morning of the 18th.
Yes.
The very morning, the very day, Cooper died.
That's correct.
Okay. What I want to know is this. In the 28 months since Cooper Harris died, has anyone from the Cobb County Police Department ever contacted you?
No.
Has anyone from my office contacted you in those 28 months?
Yes.
When did we contact you?
It was shortly after everything happened. Like I think it was like 2 weeks after.
Okay.
Yeah.
When is the first time anyone from the Cobb County District Attorney's Office contacted you?
It was September of this year.
Month before that.
Yes, 2016.
That's all I have.
Ms. Coyle, were you aware that the police had actually obtained your email and seen that there was no response from the defendant to your email that day?
No.
Okay, that's all I have.
Anything further?
No, ma'am.
No, just, but you can leave. We'll see how long that lasts. Thank you.
Yes.
I do believe that you are free to go.
Thank you. We'll call Billy Kirkpatrick.
You solemnly swear affirm the testimony you give before the hearing on this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Hey, good morning, Billy. Please tell us who you are and where you live, sir.
I'm Billy Kirkpatrick, and I live in Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Okay, and you've been here, you've been here all morning, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and are you nervous?
Slightly.
Okay. All right. I want to get into several things involving your relationship with Ross. But first of all, I want these folks to know who you are. So if you would, please tell these people a little bit about your background, kind of, well, first of all, what you do, and sort of your education and work experience, please.
Okay. Currently, I run an agency called West Alabama AIDS Outreach in Tuscaloosa. We serve low-income individuals living with HIV/AIDS in a 10-county area. I also teach a class at the University of Alabama called Nonprofit Administration. My bachelor's degree, all 3 degrees are from the University of Alabama. Bachelor's degree is in psychology, my master's is in counseling, and my PhD is in a joint program in public administration and management.
All right. And just a little bit about the kind of work that you have done in the years that you've known Ross. Where have you worked?
Yeah, my first job out of college, about the time that I met Ross, was at an elementary school. And I was an in-school intervention specialist, which meant I worked with children with behavior problems. After that, I worked at a program through the University of Alabama called Brewer Porch Children's Center. And it had several programs, but each program was for children with diagnosed mental and behavioral disorders. After that, I had a short stint at the VA with veterans working with PTSD. And since then, I have worked at West Alabama AIDS Outreach. But in the past decade, I've also been on the board of Child Abuse Prevention Services, a nonprofit United Way agency in Tuscaloosa.
Okay. And so I want to go ahead and move into a little bit about some other things that you do or involved in outside of your professional career, specifically as relates to men's group and your church. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. It has always been my contention that sexual sin, especially in the South, or sexual temptations, are something that we don't talk about in the church. If somebody stood up and said, I'm struggling with alcohol or I'm struggling with something else, everybody's kind of compassionate to that. But if men talk about struggling with sexual issues, it's kind of taboo. And so at my church, Capstone Church in Tuscaloosa, I've been very open about asking men to discuss those things because it's the isolation that kills. And so we had several men that have been honest and brave and discussed their issues with the church. And there's a group called Capstone Recovery that for about 3 years I co-facilitated with men with different levels of sexual issues. Some guys were just occasionally struggling with watching pornography, and some men in that group were having constant affairs. We're trying to work on that. So we've done that for quite a while at the church.
Okay. All right. I want to now move into how it is that you know Ross. Now we heard from Michael Simmons earlier this morning, and you and Michael are still close friends, right?
Very close, yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I think the jury's got a little bit of an idea about how y'all all met and whatnot. But if you could just real briefly tell us about how you became friends with Ross and sort of over the years how your relationship has progressed.
Absolutely. Well, there's an apartment complex called Country Club Apartments in Tuscaloosa. I lived there. Ross moved in with our other friend who's close, James Jones. Eventually, we were all roommates at some point, and we've been incredibly close since. Ross, in that time, I'm from North Carolina. He has traveled with me and my son on several occasions, either for Christmas with my family, weddings of my cousins, those kind of things. Ross is also, he did a lot of work for me at West Alabama AIDS Outreach as our IT specialist, mostly because I could pay him less while he was in school than I could anybody else, but he did a fantastic job. We went to church together. We were in the same small group together when they were in Tuscaloosa, and just lived a lot of life together, a lot of football. And I will say there was a period of my life before I got remarried where Ross and Lana were my social group. So all of my social outings were with them.
Were you, so you were friendly with Ross, so y'all were friends well before he and Leanna got married?
Yes, sir.
All right. Were you in the wedding?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And he was in my wedding, yes.
So just to kind of follow up on what you said Ross and Leanna were your social group.
Yes.
Now, obviously, there can be a time when they have moved to Marietta.
Mhm.
But if you could, just very briefly explain to the jury sort of the nature of y'all's dynamic of y'all's relationship over the years, the kind of things y'all would do together and kind of time you would spend together.
Yeah, they actually got a house in Moundville, which was maybe 15 minutes from my house. So, as you may know, we love our football in Tuscaloosa, and so we watched a lot of football together, hung out together. I was actually getting my PhD while he was getting his degree in MIS, so we talked a lot about school together. We shared a lot of jokes, watched the same TV shows, movies, just were together quite a bit.
And then when they moved to Marietta, did you and Ross remain friends?
We did, yes.
How would y'all typically talk and communicate once he moved out of Tuscaloosa?
Over the phone. Some emails, but mostly over the phone, yes, sir.
And did you have a chance to continue to visit with him either in Marietta or Tuscaloosa or North Carolina?
Several times, yes. We weren't able to do a North Carolina trip after that because then he was working. It was a little easier when he was in school.
Right.
But we'd go there and watch football games in Georgia. They'd come visit. Anytime they came to visit, we were together. Several times I'd be in Georgia with him.
And the jury's heard a little bit about this already, but Ross's parents still live in Tuscaloosa.
Yes, sir.
All right. Leanna's got some family there, her brothers. So after they moved, is it fair to say they would still have reasons to come back to Tuscaloosa and visit, and y'all would hang out?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's then just kind of slide into when they found out they were going to have a child. All right. Tell us about whatever you can recall from sort of that period when Leanna became pregnant.
Well, they had talked about it for a long time, and they had really struggled with that, and it was something that created a lot of pain in them. We talked about that extensively. So when they actually got pregnant, now the day they told me I was the first person they told. I think they were just trying to be sweet. I know I was in the top 5, okay? But they knew that I was that invested in their lives, and they knew that I knew it was that important to them. And so they were very excited to tell me. I still remember where I was when they told me. And they were very excited, and then they were kind of in that whole planning phase from that point on, how to make the best life for their child.
After Cooper was born, they're living in Marietta. Over the next almost 2 years, did you still have opportunity to spend time with
Yes.
Ross
Yes, sir.
and Leanna and Cooper?
Yes, sir.
All right, if you could sort of break that down for these folks and let them know when and where and what kind of quality time you spent with them.
Okay. There may have been 8 or 9 times that I was around them. The first one there was an Alabama-Michigan game, and so I went to Marietta to watch that with them. And I was there Friday night, Saturday, left Sunday. And Cooper was, in fact, maybe a few weeks older. He was he was tiny. Because I took him outside, and Lena got mad at me for taking him outside. But we had a lot of time together. I got to see Leanna and Cooper interact. Got to see Ross and Cooper interact. Just had a great time. There were several other times they would visit. I might see them at church, and Ross is walking around with Cooper at church. There was another game that we watched together when they came back to Tuscaloosa, and they stayed with her mom. Cooper was actually very, very sick that night, and Ross, in my opinion, just was incredibly loving and doting. Some men are not that good with their kids during a football game, but he didn't really care about anything else. And Cooper was in the playpen and screaming, and Ross got him and just held him and comforted him. And there was a few times at his parents' house, and he was taking care of Cooper and hanging out with him. And just times like that, many, many moments where I get to be with them and watch those interactions and spend a good bit of quality time with them.
Do you believe that Ross was a loving father?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
You have some knowledge that Ross was dealing with sexual sins in his life.
Yes, sir.
When did you become aware of that?
Around 2010.
And to the best of your recollection, just kind of tell these folks sort of how you came to know about those matters.
Okay. Well, as close as we were, there are things that I'm going to know about. Certain issues that I'm going to know about in his life, and kind of came out through discussions with him, and Leanna had made some comments that, she had found out some things he was doing. At that point, I wasn't really sure of the extent. I don't know. I didn't know if he was watching pornography only. I didn't know what it was. So from that point, he and I would have conversations. And like I told you, just like I do with church, this is something that I think is much more healthy to be addressed openly. And so he and I would discuss it, and then it kind of became clear exactly what his issues were. And so I think around that time, he asked me to be his Covenant Eyes partner, which is a software that allows me to see any questionable sites that he looks at. And then we kind of went from there. So we did that for a few years. And then, as often happens, as he moved and as my life was changing, I wasn't very consistent with that in terms of being a good accountability partner. And then he kind of, in 2013, kind of re-upped that and said, let's get back on this. I'm still needing some help with this. And so we kind of went from there.
Just so these folks will understand, the accountability partner, you said it was software. Is this some software that Ross brought to you for you to put on your computer or for him to put on his?
It sends me an email where I have to confirm that I'm okay being an accountability partner. And then from that point on, once it's confirmed, it sends it to me, whatever questionable sites that he looks at. Then I'm then privy to that information.
And it's fair to say Ross was continued to visit highly inappropriate.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You told us they then, of course, moved to Marietta, and then you said sometime around 2013 there was additional discussion about kind of re-upping it or sort of getting back into addressing these problems.
Yes, sir.
I want to show you a couple of emails. 182, 183. See if you remember those.
Yes, sir.
All right, are those emails between you and Ross kind of regarding this subject matter?
Yes, sir.
And what are the date of those emails?
March 16, 2013.
182, 183.
No objection.
Admitted.
So if you would, number 182 is an email from Ross. Subject is, "Hey buddy," to you, March 16, 2013. If you would, just read what that email is.
Hey, man, just wanted to give you a heads up on something. Over the past 2 months or so, I've really been having a struggle with pornography, and yes, Leanna is aware. We're going to start a well-recommended Christian-based marriage counselor who specializes in this type of issue. I'm resetting you up on my Covenant Eyes and ask that you check this every day or at least once every few days. Please do not hesitate to question my actions, and feel free to report to Leanna after me and you talk. This is something I need serious accountability over. Thanks, buddy, and don't worry, Leanna and I are fine.
And you responded to him that same day. Can you just read your response?
I'm really proud of you for getting into counseling. I've never known how you want me to address the report I get from Covenant Eyes, but I'll contact you each time there's an issue. Anytime you're struggling, feel free to call or text me. I can talk and pray with you. Again, I'm really proud of you for getting help. What are you guys doing 2 weekends from now?
This did work for Ross, did it?
No, sir.
Did you have any knowledge of the fact that Ross was actually instant messaging with on different social app platforms with women that he was not married to?
I didn't know the specifics, but when the Covenant Eyes sends me the report, there were sites such as Adult Friend Finder, Ashley Madison, and Adult Sex Finder.
Okay.
So, I never addressed those as I should have with him, but I had some inkling of that, yes, sir.
What about actual trysts or intimate hookups with women his vehicle or at his apartment?
No, sir.
Were you his best friend?
Yes.
You surprised he didn't tell you?
No, sir.
Why not?
Given the nature of our relationship, and he knew what my expectations were for him, and it was already hard for him to talk to me about these things when we talked in person, I think he would have been humiliated, and he knew that I would have been disappointed in him.
Are you disappointed in Billy?
Extremely, yes, sir.
Did you know that in May of 2014 that he actually engaged the services of a prostitute?
No, sir.
Are you surprised he didn't tell you about that?
No, sir.
Are you disappointed in him?
Yes, sir.
We've heard a little bit about Ross's personality. I think you're probably in as good a position as anybody to put your 2 cents in about any of his quirks or eccentricities. Is there anything that you think these people should know sort of about the way he was?
Should I call him for a narrative judge about what he thinks they should know about him?
I could rephrase that. Tell us about his personality.
Ross is very unique. I love Ross, but he is often a massive dork. He is very curious. He is always looking for just new information that is just senseless facts. He has moments where he is an incredible friend. As when he did work for me, he did amazing work. He just, but it's sometimes very difficult to put your finger on just his uniqueness. Very unique guy.
How was he in public?
He never shuts up. He will go to a Mexican restaurant and suddenly he is perfectly fluent in Spanish with the waitress. If there is a guitar anywhere within 20 yards, he's going to find it and play it, like not just play it, but like play it in your face. He loved being the center of attention. And in fact, one time he and I went to a restaurant, Hooligans in Tuscaloosa, for lunch, and I knew more people than he did in that restaurant, and it pissed him off. But incredibly friendly, very, very social, and always the life of the party.
Was he, was he an emotional person? And by that I mean in the sense that did he often exhibit highs and lows of emotion? Why do you say that?
It just really didn't seem to matter what the context was. He just was kind of even keel all the time. When he was in school, and the degree he got, it's a very difficult degree to be an undergrad degree. Even in his school stress, he was even keel. He was actually doing the mail at UA when the firecracker blew his eardrum out. And he would come in, because I worked at UA, so I'd see him when he was doing the mail. And he's in a lot of pain, still even keel. I know there are times when, before Leanna, he's living at home, didn't really have a car, didn't have much of a career prospect. Obviously, all that changed for him, but before that, even in those moments, he was still just even keel all the time.
I want to ask you about if you were friendly with him or living with him at the time that he was working for the Tuscaloosa Police Department.
close. I wasn't living with him.
Okay.
But, yeah, I remember when because he was doing parking at UA, and then he was doing the mail at UA, so then he got the job as a dispatcher, which at that point was a huge step up for him. He was very proud of that job.
Did you ever know Ross, or have you known Ross over the years, to use police jargon or police lingo?
I've never not known him to use police lingo.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
In any particular context?
Yeah, like, we know he's gonna do it, and so we're gonna make fun of him for it. So if we're discussing some crime, I'll be like, that's a 229, and he go, Billy, that's a 182. And I'm like, dude, I'm just kidding, man. But he would always correct it. And he would randomly just, talk about crimes, but he would do it in code.
All right, so talked a little bit about your knowledge that Ross was dealing with some sexual sins. Did you later become aware that that had impact on Ross's relationship with his wife? Okay. Tell us what you knew about that.
Like I said, when I first heard about it, I wasn't really clear of what it was or what the extent was. But the three of us had a really open relationship. We would talk about those things. And then I learned it was, from what I knew at that point, was him having actual communication with women over the internet. She was obviously devastated by that. And then so, they talked to me about, and they would talk to our pastor at church about that. And, the pastor at church at that time, this is in Tuscaloosa, told Ross that, most marriages don't survive this twice. There was a point also, even after they had moved to Georgia, where they came back into town and they were at my house, and it was the three of us sitting on the couch, and Leanna was just talking about her disappointment in these things with him, and just really questioning whether she could stay with him or not at that point.
Were you aware that he actually had some physical problems as well that he was trying to address?
Yes, sir.
What was that?
Low testosterone was a major issue for them. I think it was a self-esteem killer for both of them, just based on what they've said. It made it hard for them to be intimate, and it was a real struggle for them.
Have you ever known Ross in any setting to speak about his son in any way conveying to you malice or hatred?
No, sir. Exactly the opposite.
Thank you, Billy.
Good afternoon, morning, almost afternoon. You said that you had a very open relationship with the defendant, correct? But then when we talked about whether he would confess to you, whether they're going to a prostitute or things, you said he wouldn't talk to you about that because he'd be humiliated. Okay. But you're talking, when was this conversation that you had with the defendant and Leanna on the couch about his issues?
I'm not sure of the year, but it was, like I said, after they had moved to Georgia.
Okay. And she actually said she didn't know if she could stay with them. Okay. What did the defendant say?
Nothing. I mean, it was an embarrassing conversation for him. He didn't have much to say on that.
He sat there. Okay. Is that unusual for him? To sit there and be quiet and not say a word?
In that context,
Yes.
I didn't take it as unusual at all.
Okay, so he's gregarious and fun-loving and all this on one side, and then he's got another side that just doesn't want to talk?
This is very typical of sexual issues. It's embarrassing. So regarding that, he wouldn't want to talk about it. The things he wants to talk about are things that he can brag about.
He still talks to you about his pornography and things like that, correct?
To me, yes.
Yes.
But he wasn't gregarious about that at all.
Okay.
That was a difficult conversation for us to have, but he had it with me.
Okay, and you wanted him to be open with you and honest with you and things like that. And you talked about the fact that you noticed these adult friend finder sites and things like that. You didn't talk to him because you didn't want to humiliate him, correct?
No, first of all, for my part, that was my responsibility, and I dropped the ball.
Right.
He is responsible for his actions,
Mhm.
but if I take on the responsibility and the commitment to be his covenant partner, then I should have done a better job. I think my issue was, at that point, I feel like I was ruining the marriage of my best friend.
Did you say that you thought you didn't want to humiliate him, though? That's one of the things, because it was humiliating. You didn't want to talk to him about it.
No, that
That didn't play into it?
No, not at all.
Okay. Did you think about Leanna and Cooper at this time? And maybe
Yes.
talking to him about it, if he was going out and seeking prostitutes out and looking for adult friend finder and things like that?
Well, I have no evidence he was with prostitutes. All I know was what I saw on the website. And I should have thought about Lena and Cooper. That was my bad again.
Okay. And these were his actions, though. He's a grown man
Absolutely.
choosing to do these things.
Yes. And I was a grown man that committed to be his accountability partner. So for my part, I did not do what I should have done.
Okay. So, 2010, you became his covenant eyes partner, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that was after he got busted by Leanna, right? Okay, so he didn't come to you until he gets in trouble, right? 2013, again, he gets busted by Leanna. Then he comes to you and tells you, I've got a problem with pornography, right?
That's not the extent of the conversations at all. No, sir.
Okay.
So if he gets busted in 2010, then from 2010 to 13, we're having intermittent discussions about this. You know, he's at my office at work, we're driving around, we're talking about these things, right? Now, I still don't feel like I've addressed it as aggressively as I should have, but it wasn't in bad times that he was just doing that. Sometimes it was just normal times when he was struggling, we would discuss it.
Do you think that if he was going as far as to do things like behavior of engaging in sexual acts with strangers anonymously and in public settings and messaging underage girls, minors, committing criminal acts, do you think you could have stopped him if he'd gone that far?
I don't think I could have stopped him from anything.
Okay. And you would agree that the Ross Harris you knew is not a person who would be doing those type of things, correct?
I wouldn't say that either.
Okay.
I can't peg him with a broad stroke. I can tell you this. I saw him struggle with sexual sin. At the same time, I saw him being a tremendous friend to me and a tremendous father.
And a tremendous husband too, right?
At times, yes. Obviously not always, but there were times, yes. He was very loving and very sacrificial for his wife.
Yet he continued to abuse that relationship.
Yeah. Which is
And
very
lie to her?
typical of sexual issues, yes, sir.
Okay. And how often have you met with the defense on this case, and how long did y'all prep for your answers here today?
Met with him a few times.
And
But
when
my
you,
answers are my answers. I want to be clear on that.
I understand that, and you met with the defense, and he asked you about his personality, the defendant's personality,
Yes.
and you were able to rattle off several key statements that we've heard in this courtroom several times. Did you go over that with the defense, these several key personality traits?
In a very minimal sense, but those key personality traits were things that I think anybody that knew him for any period of time would pick up on.
Right, like you said, he was very, he wanted to be the most popular guy there, and you said he got mad at you one time when you knew more people than him.
Yes.
He wanted to be the center of attention.
Yep.
He was very worried about perception. You would agree with that?
Yep. So, which would be consistent with what anybody else that knows him for 5 minutes would say.
Absolutely. And you said that he even went to, when he would go to a Mexican restaurant, he would basically adopt speaking in Spanish and start talking like that, correct? Basically, whoever he is around, he is going to try to assimilate with them and be who they want him to be, correct? To become friends with them.
Yep.
Did you know that in 2013 he was actually saying he was in love with another girl, an 18-year-old at that time?
Did not know
safe to say, as close as you were, there was a lot you didn't know about the defendant, correct? Would you at least agree with that?
I don't know what I know and what I don't know. I mean, I don't know all the evidence in this trial. Obviously, there are things I don't know, but there's a lot that I do know. And I don't think there's a big jump between what I did know and some of the things that you're insinuating he didn't know.
Did you know that he said he needed an escape from his son 10 minutes before locking him in a car?
I'm going to object. I don't, that's not accurate.
That's my cross.
Okay. Did you know he said, I love my son-in-law, but we both need escapes 10 minutes before he locked the child in the car?
Did not know that.
Did you know he continued that conversation about 1 minute before locking that child in the car?
Did not know that.
Yeah.
Nothing further.
Did you know he was planning to take Cooper on a cruise?
I did not know that. No, sir.
Okay. That's not something we talked about, was it? Okay. Thank you.
Nothing further, Judge.
Can we approach Judge?
I warned y'all, I knew y'all, so y'all can make plans and everything like that. There'll be a lunch shortly. Those of you who'd like to leave are welcome to do so. Those of you who want to remain and have lunch, Ms. Reese will have it for y'all and take good care of you too, as she always does. And your bailiffs. And everybody here is just an amazing staff of folks that are taking care of y'all, and I appreciate them. So, what are the rules? Close your notepads, keep an open mind, don't discuss the matter. Enjoy your afternoon. We'll resume at 8:30 in the morning. As I've said word to you, I anticipate Thursday and Friday will be days that will be in court. Our regular hours will be back on track. As we all know, getting folks here and scheduling everybody can be a challenge. It's been a challenge for both sides. I've been doing trial work, court work, and 38 years of my life. 34 as a judge, and everything's being done to get the witnesses here. It's not a fault of anything other than just planning the logistics. So I want you to know that everyone's working really, really hard to get this case to you and get it presented to you in orderly and proper manner, using time and resources properly. And frankly, y'all's time is one of the resources involved in the case. And that's when they let me, and they've been real good, keeping me in the loop of what's going on. When I knew it was going to be a short day today, I wanted y'all to know for your planning purposes, because I'm sure you have things to do. So I will see you all at 8:30 in the morning, and have a very good evening.
Let's all rise for the jury.